We thank you, Jehovah, for this day to begin our MTEF sector public hearing. And Father, you have made it be. Honor and glory unto you. As we begin the day, we commit and surrender ourselves unto you. You guide us. May you bless this nation, O Lord God Almighty. We commit the chief guest today, our CS, into your mighty and able hand, together with the other chief guest. But that by the comments they're going to give us, Jehovah Father, it will be, Jehovah Father, to better the plans we have for this country in the next MTEF. We thank you for each and everyone who is already coming, that they may come, we carry on together with them. For it is in Jesus' mighty name we pray and believe. Amen.
Thank you. This morning, I think this process, and we have our chief guests, or keynote speaker, the CS National Treasury, and Appropriations Committee in our midst. My role this morning is to invite the DG Fiscal and Economic Affairs Directorate, to invite the PS, who will in turn invite the CS, and if you may wish, to also invite the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee to make some remarks, and thereafter the PS will take over the sharing, the chairing of the session and the session that comes after. So with that, I just want to call upon my DG, Bwana Albert Mwenda, to come and welcome the PS. Thank you, Bwana Mwenda.
Thank you, Francis. Good morning. The Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Economic Planning, the Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, the PS National Treasury, distinguished senior government officials present here, and partners. I am delighted this morning to stand before you, partly also because we've seen the support we've received CS from ministries and departments under the process led by the PS National Treasury. There have been public consultations to inform the next year's budget process. And I want to appreciate the technical teams headed by Director Francis Anyona, and from the ministries for your efforts. We have visited all the county governments to get views from the general public, and I wanted to give that appreciation. CS, my role here is very simple, is to invite the PS National Treasury to make his opening remarks and invite you to officially kickstart the sector hearings. Welcome, please.
Thank you, DG Mwenda, and thank you also, Controller Budget, Director of Budget, Cabinet Secretary, Professor Ndindi, who is our team leader at the National Treasury, the Chairperson of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, Principal Secretaries and Accounting Officers present, development partners that are here, and I want to recognize the Deputy Chief Mission of the Embassy of Japan in Kenya, Mr. Kitagawa Yasuhisha. Members of the media that are present, and the distinguished guests. Good morning. I'm Jambo. Salam alaikum.
I'll make a brief remarks before I invite the chair of the Budget and Appropriation Committee, and thereafter invite the CS to this meeting. So let me take this first opportunity to welcome all of you to this public sector hearings for the fiscal year 24-25 and the medium term. I wish to thank all of you for finding time to be with us during this important event in our budget making process. As already recalled by Director Anyona, we were here on the 18th of August to launch the sector working groups. And sector working groups were given the mandate to develop budget proposals for the fiscal year 24-25 and the medium term. Consequently, the sector working groups have finalized and have submitted the draft sector budget proposals. And it is in this regard that I want to commend the sector working groups for this achievement. Honorable Cabinet Secretary, public sector hearings are meant to provide a platform for stakeholders to validate and give feedback on the sector budget proposal. This gives stakeholders the opportunity to participate and contribute to the formulation of the national budget. You will recall that this year we held countrywide public participation in the counties. The reports from the counties were used by the sectors in coming up with the draft budget proposals. Further, in developing the proposals for the medium term, the sector working groups reviewed the budget performance for the past 3 years and reflected on priority areas of for the ensuing period while taking into account the available resources. The sector working groups were guided by the Kenya Vision 2030 and its priorities for the medium term. Additionally, the groups took into account the bottom-up economic transformation agenda priorities for the Kenya Kwanza government. The sector budget proposals will provide valuable information that will be used in the finalization of the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's hearing will be held from today, 13 to 15 December 2023. That is today, Wednesday to Friday. I wish to request you to critically analyze the budget proposals and give us your input for incorporation in the finalization of the national budget. Before I invite the CS, National Treasury and Economic Planning to make his remarks, allow me to make just a few remarks from my position as an accounting officer at the PS National Treasury. First, budget implementation for fiscal year 23-24. The implementation of the fiscal year 23-24 budget is on course, but with challenges relating to revenue performance. Depreciation of the Kenya shilling against major currencies leading to escalation in debt servicing costs. We have also settlement of expenditure carryovers for the fiscal year 22-23 and clearing of pending bills, as well as increased demand for additional funding for priority intervention. The recent more than expected rainfall, that's the El Nino rains, have been, of course, a challenge because they have put fiscal pressure on us. But despite this, the government is implementing appropriate measures to address the negative impacts of the climate change impacts, especially the El Nino, including restoration of critical infrastructure, humanitarian assistance, and public health intervention. I want to address myself also on settlement of outstanding pending bills. Settlement of outstanding pending bills remains a big challenge to the government. It is estimated that the national government and county governments could be owing suppliers, merchants, and contractors close to 640 billion in form of pending bills since June 2005 and June 2022. Recognizing this magnitude of the problem, Cabinet has recently approved the establishment of pending bills verification committee, which has been tasked with the auditing of all unpaid liabilities for the period 2005 and 2022. This multi-agency committee has representatives from Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Law Society of Kenya, the Institute of Engineers of Kenya, and the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. And this, they have been given a timeline by the CS to examine and establish the integrity of all the pending bills. The government will honor the obligation verified as payable and come up with a mechanism to stop accumulation of further pending bills. And there is also the issue of stalled projects. Yes, I think this I keep repeating because it's important given this is focusing on budget. During the fiscal year 2018-2019, the National Treasury undertook a review of the stock of projects in all ministries, departments, and agencies, and established that projects which had stopped being implemented for various reasons would have been receiving token budget allocations which cannot facilitate meaningful implementation and therefore stalled. And this amounted to over 1.3 trillion Kenya shillings. That's a lot of money. These projects can also be attributed to escalation of pending bills that I have already alluded to. So going forward, the government is going to reappraise all stalled projects to establish whether they are aligned with the development agenda. These projects will not be aligned with the development agenda. That the projects that will not be aligned to the development agenda will be cancelled or suspended until such a time when resources are available for their implementation. Those aligned with the development agenda will be taken on board and allocated necessary resources for implementation. I think the other issue that I have here could be addressed by CS, because CS, you had asked me to, you may not likely to come. Now that you come, I don't think I need to repeat this. I'll leave the rest to you to mention them. So I will stop here now by just concluding that the contribution of the public is welcome, as it will help us focus spending proposals in budget statement, and ultimately the fiscal year 24-25 budget to be submitted to Parliament in April 2024. With these remarks, it's now my humble duty to invite the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, to make his remarks, and thereafter, please go ahead and invite my Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much, my brother, Dr. Kipto, our PS for the National Treasury, Professor Juguna Dombo, our PS, Dr. Kipto, the team from the National Treasury, Mr. Mwenda, and also Bwana Anyona and the entire team, all the accounting officers representing various MDAs, and also our development partners. Good morning. I'll try to be very brief because CS will be rushing to the full cabinet later. But first of all, I want to thank the team from the National Treasury because we have been working very closely together in the Parliament and also National Treasury, because both institutions are very pivotal in the budget making process. I also want to thank all the participants of this lounge today, all the accounting officers, majority of whom we interact very closely in the process of budget making, and also everyone else who is here, including the people who disseminate the decisions we make to the public. That is the team from the media. I first of all want to highlight that this process is very critical, the one we are doing for the next 3 days. As you are aware, the budget making process starts quite early. We were here some months back in the launch of whatever we are doing today, and it is important that all the accounting officers note that this process is actually what gives them money. Because most times we see, after we do all this donkey work, then at the tail end, people who could not have been so much involved in the sector working groups, then they want some enhancement in their budgets. So it is important that we take this process very seriously, because there is usually no money anywhere to add anyone. Because the budget, we make it using a threshold of a parameter, and especially deficit to GDP ratio. And therefore, coming late in the day to ask for enhancements would only mean that we then take from someone, because usually it is usually zero sum by the time it reaches the tail end. So it's very important that we participate robustly in the allocation of resources around this time. And also it is important that Kenya currently is a very open democracy. Budget making process by itself is a public affair. And that is why members of public are always welcome. I know today here, there could be representatives of farmers, there could be representatives of other sectors of our economy, because it is important. The budget we make does not belong to the people that you see here. It does not belong to the leaders. We make the budget for our country and Kenyans. We benefit a lot from your wisdom as you participate in the public participation. My second point, then I do the last one, is that in many times, it is important to look at the circumstance when we are making the budget. And Professor, I look back when we had such an event, when we came in, and I have seen, I was thinking actually, because we were just from campaigns then, in our first such engagement, I was thinking that was the most intense in terms of how the economy was performing. But then I have seen it keeps on evolving. That time we were dealing with drought. Now we are dealing with prospects of rains that are higher than expected. So it is usually a cycle that we have to keep on managing. But see, here's one thing that is very phenomenal that I've seen. And I actually sympathize with your position together with the peers. I think your offices are the ones that work the hardest in this country because you have to manage so many things. But looking at it in terms of the global macro, you know, you see all the economies of the world are having contractionary to reflect what you are doing in the budget making process in terms of allocations. When other countries are contractionary, can one economy like Kenya all economies are raising interest rates, for example. That is more contractionary. Then, would Kenya afford then to do the reverse? From the position where I am, I think Kenya being so integral with the global economy, it may not be possible for us to have very different policies from the ones that the entire globe is adopting. Why? Many times we say the interest rate is going up, it is hurting businesses. But then on the other side, if our monetary policy then is the other way around, then you will end up again having capital outflows when we have interest rates that is lower than what is happening across the world. So it is important that when our monetary policy is contractionary, then on the other side our fiscal policy cannot be expansionary. And that is why you see also there is a dent in terms of development expenditure, because raising government expenditure is physically expansionary. So we have to keep on balancing those so that we deliver well at the end of the tunnel. But lastly also, very last, I have to laud the work that we are doing as a country. We have done quite well. We don't need to lament too much because figures don't lie. Kenya, in the first quarter of this year, we grew by 5.3%. In the second quarter, we grew by 5.4% of the GDP. Kenya, if you check across all the over 200 countries of the world, Kenya was the 29th fastest growing economy in the world. I know that has a problem reflecting in the pockets of Kenyans, but that is the reality. Also on the side of inflation, as the other countries deal with the inflation, which is running beyond the target, our inflation is within our benchmark. Our benchmark being around 5% and a band of 2.5% either way. We are now at 6.8%. So even as we see the hardships around our economy, the parameters are not so bad. Kenya is growing, that is the truth, at around 5.4%. In fact, growing faster than China. And growing much faster than my friend from Japan, much faster, in many multiples, by the way. So Kenya is doing well, but we now need to capitalize on transferring this growth to the pockets of Kenyans by having a manner that, or a policy that is more egalitarian, a policy that pushes money to the pockets of Kenyans, because that is where the real economy is. Having said that, also we have to keep on managing that budget making process. The liquidity is also coming out very strongly to be another arm of budget making process. Because we do a lot of budget here, but then it's dependent on how much money we collect through KRA. And I am sure through the figures that I've seen, we'll keep on enhancing our revenue collection so that the budget we make here actually ends up being funded and in good time. Having said that, it's now my pleasure to invite my schoolmate, Professor Jegona Dongo, to come and now open this forum officially. Karibu sana Prof.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of Budget and Appropriation Committee. At least you have confirmed that I managed to go to school. My title is not just a title. And thank you very much, my colleagues from the National Treasury, those who are seated here, those who are in front here, the peers, the Director Budget and Director General Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee. Principal secretaries that are with us, development partners, thank you very much for coming. The media, I very much appreciate your presence. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The chairman was complaining that the room is not very full, and I was telling him that the quality of the meeting is not judged by how many people were in the meeting, but the quality of the decisions that have been made. We do believe that we're going to make a good kickoff, but also there are some people who believe that they can come on the first day, and others who believe they can come on the third day to see whether you've made the right conclusions. So maybe it's the partition of division of labor. But it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to these public hearings on the budget proposals for financial year 2024-2025. I'm sure everybody is looking forward to this. But I'm also sure that everybody is looking forward to this because they want to review what we have done so far and what we anticipate the future to hold. And that is very, very important. And that's why you've seen my colleagues here, including the chair of Budget and Appropriation Committee, is going into explaining exactly what the constraints we are facing and how we are likely to face or shape those constraints. I do believe this is where we need to go. It is very, very important that we take opportunity to appreciate what we are doing and what the stakeholders are actually going to position themselves to tell us. And for us, this is a very important session. And I'm told we have covered most of the sessions except those that were challenged. That is the region. The committee has been covering most of the region except those areas that have been challenged because of physical reach because of El Nino. And the activity we are starting off today is actually enshrined in our Constitution. Article 201A of the Constitution of Kenya provides for openness and accountability, including public participation, as principles that guide all aspects of public finance. So it is in this regard that we have organized this forum to give members of the public, as key stakeholders, an opportunity to provide additional views and critique in budget proposals for the next financial year and even the medium term. I added critique because we are not just going to accept what is happening, we are just also trying to investigate what else can be done. We know that there are some difficult times we are going through, and when we listen to everybody has a view, but it is not a structural view or a reformist view, it's just a criticism. It is so easy to criticize. You don't have to read anything to criticize anything. You can even criticize my height, by the way. You don't even have to measure it. But that is not very positive and not good enough for us. Let me say that we would like to deepen public participation. And that is why the National Treasury went countrywide to do that. But we also want to make sure that what we propose and actually argue on is understood. What I've seen, and that is maybe my DNA as a teacher, is that most of the things have not been understood. And I think, and I like, my peers was trying to explain most of those things. The chair was also explaining most of those things. In fact, bringing the global structure to us. That is very, very important. The most important thing is when we meet in a session like this, we also try to understand the background of the issues and how they have come along and how we can change the tide or change the way things are just because we believe that the tide is changing and we have different perception in terms of what we're doing. I'm so happy that some of the parameters have already been mentioned about the growth performance and where we are coming from. I'm so happy that most of the time I also see the papers, they analyze things nicely. They provide the right data, but they analyze things the wrong way. So essentially, when we are seated here, it's actually also to try and correct that picture. Because we don't want to make an assumption that we have the same knowledge base. We may have the same data and information base, but our interpretation may be different. That's why I was talking, saying that the economy is better performing and maybe is performing better compared to other countries that are sinking into a recession because of and even persistent negative shocks. And they have been with us. We are not lighting them because they have been found or because we are talking about them. We are writing about them because they are affecting the economy in totality. But we do believe that the economic growth is projected at 5.5% in 2022. Anticipates. Essentially, what we're really saying is that we need to do more so that we actually have a momentum that is sustained. Economic transformation is also driven by capital accumulation, and that early this year is actually the global dollar shopping. In the African continent. In fact, even Europe itself was also caught flat-footed when the US Fed started tightening monetary policy. So we don't want to sit back and say it's us. No, everybody anticipated that things will work better, but then it went in the wrong way. That is why the Central Bank of Kenya tightened monetary policy, moved from 10.5 the CBR to 12.5. That's about 200 basis points. There are three important facts that the chairperson mentioned. One of them is actually to reduce the interest differential between us and the developed and other countries, which means that we halt capital flight. The second one is actually to look at inflation. I saw Business Daily, is it yesterday or the Monday? It had a nice picture of how the inflation profile has been. Although the story was not commensurate, the data was quite correct. It showed that we had a peak of 9.22% in July 2022 of inflation, and it has now come down to 6.7. But the problem is it's not flattening. It is still at the upper range. So it means that monetary policy action is supposed to deal with that. And finally, we've seen that the nominal exchange rate has been quite volatile. First, it may not have completed its adjustment process from previous mistakes, but more importantly, we do believe that because of that capital flight, it has also been disturbed. And so a combination of that action is actually going to help us in terms of stabilizing that. That is three factors or three reasons to try and consolidate what the chairman has said. And I don't want to say I'm an expert. I'm no longer in Central Bank. I had sworn that I don't talk about monetary policy. But now that I'm back in the team, I can talk as a team member in that place and team leader in that space. But it's because I'm trying to tackle what was the action point. It is very, very important to understand that. And it's also very important for us to flatten the inflation to the lower band. And when I talk about inflation, it's also important to talk about the subject matter of cost of living. Because I think I've realized that there's a group of people who talk about the cost of living, And at the same time, they talk about inflation, but they don't relate the two, that they mean the same thing. Inflation is a summary measure of cost of living. How inflation is computed is actually looking at the basket of goods that are consumed and bought by different cohorts of population groups and in different locations in Kenya. That basket contains goods that are consumed by the low income group, the middle income group, and the higher income group. And they are corrected every month and compared across different locations. So inside there is unga, there is petrol, isn't it? Everything that you consume, it's a whole basket. So that's why when we talk about inflation, we are talking about the summary measure of cost of living. So when we look at it and we don't relate it to where we are, then it means we are talking about two different subjects of the cost of living and the inflation we observe. What I'm happy about is that inflation has dropped from 9.22% in July 2022. And that time we do know, and then the subsequent periods of drought, it was pushed by scarcity value. And we do know that after that, the exchange rate differential across countries was also not helping us, because domestic prices have a habit of mimicking the exchange rate movement, the nominal exchange rate movement, because the nominal exchange rate is a nationwide relative price. And so that's what we are all trying to fight, the same thing. First of all, to remove the effect of scarcity value, but also remove the effect of distortion coming from policy directions. Other countries are moving faster than us. So in a sense, when we now talk about cost of living, you know exactly what we really mean. It is their summary. I saw the Business Daily, wonderful, but the story did not follow nicely. The story was, look, we are doing something, but we are also complaining that the inflation needs to flatten at a lower band, and that is why the action on monetary policy is going to work. We are so happy that our economy responds. And maybe by the time we finish this exercise, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues here will be seeing what everybody is saying, because they will see that the inflation has responded, the exchange rate, which is a reflection of the relative price structure in the country, has responded, and then we start seeing growth responding. And that is why when we meet here and we discuss the budget cycle and prospects of budget cycle, we should be happy that this is the anticipation of policy. We should be happy that once we have got it right, then we can expect the economy to respond. The third thing I want us to talk about is the risk to the outlook, to the economic outlook. Even though we talk nicely about that. A few days ago, last week, I talked about that we don't know why the world is mistreating us. Actually, I talked in Swahili and nikasema, hii dunia imetufuru sana. Because in 1 year alone, we have gone into the extreme of drought. We haven't seen that drought in 40 years. Very wrong, isn't it? And in the same year, even before we recover, on top of other things, Ukrainian crisis, blah, 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 then we have El Nino. We were waiting for the rains, brought in fertilizer, but then the El Nino comes in and then we start again saving lives. In both cases, we have allocated budgetary resources, both recurrent and development, to actually save lives. Extreme drought and extreme heavy rains, El Nino, isn't it? And that is what I said when the papers reported something different. But they quoted me perfectly, but the interpretation was different. And what I really said is that this is a resource diversion from recurrent budget and even development budget to save lives. So you can imagine the way the world has mistreated us in 1 year. But even if that is the case, we are trying to live within what we can to make sure things work out. We do believe that there is a chance that we can still recover from all these persistent shocks. We still believe that there is risk to the outlook that we have but we can overcome. And we still believe that we are creating resilience that is actually very, very important. And that is why the budget implementation reassessment when we meet and then focusing on what we do in the future becomes very, very important for us. It becomes very, very important for us because we still have to deal with those constraints and we have to take advantage of them. In fact, when we meet here, it's good to actually talk about the impact of those kind of negative shocks. But more importantly, the question is, how do we take advantage of it? How do we take advantage of those shocks? I used to listen to, I've forgotten now, the Ghanaian who was the head of the UN. He used to say that, please make sure that no crisis passes without taking advantage of it. There is always, there is in the crowd, there is always a silver lining, and that is what we want to make sure that we take advantage of the silver lining. We've gone into COP28, for example, and we argued that we can develop markets. And one of the most important markets in our region is carbon markets. And the other important investment that needs to be made is going to become a very major market is actually renewable energy. And that for us is very, very important. Renewable energy, and even the breakthrough, and especially Japanese breakthrough in terms of green hydrogen, it is now moves to ammonia. It's a combination of power and fertilizer, which becomes quite very important. So essentially, we know that there are advantages and we can take advantages for them. But at the end of the day, for us to have flexibility to respond to shocks, we have to have fiscal consolidation, and that is the policy we are working on. Fiscal consolidation is going to help us in, first of all, the benefits of having fiscal space. And once you have fiscal space, you have flexibility to deal with shocks, negative shocks that are hitting on us. But you also have the flexibility to deal with positive shocks, because positive shocks gives you an avenue to take advantage of opportunities emerging. You don't always look at negative shocks. There could be positive shocks, and you have to have fiscal space, first to protect yourself from negative shocks. Second, if there are positive shocks, you need to have fiscal space to take advantage of the opportunities that come with positive shocks. So it's, in a sense, that's why we want to fight that for that space in terms of fiscal consolidation. And fiscal consolidation, the benefit of fiscal space is one, but the second one is the signaling element of showing that our debt sustainability our debt is sustainable. At the end of the day, everybody talks about sustainability of the debt, and for us, we would like to make sure that sustainability of the debt is that we now start taking advantage of growing with debt. I usually used to look at that literature. It's a very tight literature in the development discourse. It borrows from Marshall Plan. So essentially, there's nothing wrong with debt. It is only what we want to make sure that we do with it. We have, in the process, we are going to even look at our revenue sources and how we can improve on them, and how we can actually talk about the medium-term budget, the five-year budget, and what we really need to do. At the end of the day, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda is a combination of so many policies, programs, and even structural reforms that we need to take up so that we can ignite economic transformation. I'll single out most of the important points about that. First, we have argued about the value chain. And that value chain and targeted products is to make sure that we create a momentum that is going to ignite economic recovery. But more importantly is that we have to push and reform and reignite markets. You know, I argue about markets, and everybody, when I argue about markets, everybody tells me it's because I'm an economist. And that's unfortunate, because I'm an economist talking about markets, but everybody participates in the markets. It is in the marketplace that economic rent is generated and shared. Labor market is one of them, isn't it? You go and negotiate. Even working for the government, you negotiate for the salaries, isn't it? generated and distributed. But if you destroy markets, then it means that you maim that functionality of redistributing generating and redistributing. Look at sugar growing areas, look at cotton growing areas, which have been maimed by inoperational, by dysfunctional markets. The poverty has been quite biting, isn't it? These are investments that have gone down the drain. That is why we need to protect markets, because they protect the investments. And that is what is going to give us momentum. That is why when we list some of the areas that we need to look at in our value chain, leather, cotton, dairy, edible oils, tea, rice, blue economy, and natural resources, including minerals, including also building materials when we talk about affordable housing. It is because those are the easiest to ignite for now. And then we start carrying forward those that have been left behind because of failure, an institutional failure problem that led to market failure. We need to correct for institutional failure problem. I do believe that making markets work is the only way we can reignite in the short term economic activity and economic vibrancy. That is why even when you realize that everybody talking about cost of living, most of them were talking about not getting goods into the market. And again, it's an institutional failure problem, but they were relating it in the wrong place. So as we debate, and most of the issues that we're going to pull through, and even try to debate most of the issues, we would like to make sure that they are recorded in our budget proposals. We want to make sure that we have a wide-ranging debate that allows us to focus on what makes the budget work. Even though we have the best estimates, what will make it work? It's the institutional DNA that we need to inculcate. And I'm also sure that once we are prepared to take the effects or even to take control of those institutions, and also to make sure that we selfishly defend markets, that is where we are going to succeed. I personally selfishly defend markets. I have ignited my colleagues, they are all waiting for me, because even our own markets that we thought we should be in control. How you sell your bond, okay? How you sell your dollars in the market, how you sell your shares in the Nairobi Stock Exchange. You find they're not working optimally. So we have to push them. So essentially, there are so many things that we need to do. And we want to make sure that we are well informed in terms of where we are. We are gaining economic vibrancy because markets are working. But where markets have failed, you will see that there is no economic vibrancy. I also tell people that once there is no economic vibrancy, we cannot correct taxes. We are not hell-bent correcting taxes, but we do know that since government cannot generate its own income, it can only help you generate income so that you help it finance public goods. That's the logic. But then we also want, on the other hand, that with the social contracts we have with the Kenyans, it's also satisfied, so that we have to play our part. For us, it is very, very important, but we want to make sure that this debate is going to provide a platform for being well informed. This public hearing we are starting today is also to make sure that we clear the air in terms of any misunderstanding. Finally, we also want to make sure that we need to know and to see and to understand how issues are interconnected. The budget approval, the economic activity, the financing, and where we may go wrong. What is the effect of pending bills, like my peers has just said? It means that somebody somewhere is waiting for income who was not paid. So it means that according to him or her, that market failed her or failed him, isn't it? So market failure is not just the day of the market, no. It means that even the operations, the interactions that we have across each other, either the government and the private sector, or the private sector and the private sector, the smallholder traders and the private sector, or even the government across. But we make sure that we understand and interlink those policies. That way, we are going to succeed. That way, we are going to look at the propositions we have made as working. And if at all one of them doesn't work, we'll come back and say, where did we go wrong? Can we correct it? and we can correct media, isn't it? It's not given that we cannot correct what has been done. We can correct once we see that there are shocks hitting us. That's why we have revised even budgets. We have asked even supplementary ones. Sometimes we even ask for the Mheshimiwa Dede Nyoro for even supplementary too, depending on the circumstances, because once new information is coming up, we have to process that new information and to see the impact. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you. We're going to have, Anuna, you said 3 days. In 3 days, I'm sure there will be conclusions, and I'll be ready to read the conclusions. But what I wanted to make sure is that we connect all the dots. We understand the issue so that we understand the implications. And that way, we will be asking questions. Why did this work as we had anticipated? So thank you very much and good morning.
We were going to have a session with the CS, but today there's a cabinet meeting and it has started. So you can imagine the challenge my boss is going to have going to cabinet when he's late. So let's allow him to go. And I know the media would have wanted to ask questions. Maybe CS says he can come back on Friday, but he can also answer some of those questions that you may have. So maybe we take a break and come back. So we'll arrange, I think I'll arrange if there is a media phase that you want to have with the CS, I will arrange for tomorrow or Friday. I think for now we have the presentation by
thank you, Cabinet Secretary and PS. We will allow CS to move his pleasure, but the PS will join us back. But we would like to move to the next session. I know a lot of questions have been thrown to us, and CS has talked about many issues. And what we would like to do is distill those ones now in terms of numbers and trends. By giving you a presentation on the macroeconomic outlook and the medium term. I think that will then trigger a discussion. And one may ask, why do we start with the macroeconomic outlook? It is to put the pieces together and to be able to demonstrate to us that some of the issues that the Cabinet Secretary has spoken to, they actually fit in together at the macro level. For example, during our interactions with the public, we normally receive calls, or questions around this global growth, the global growth and what happens in the global atmosphere. How important is it? How does it transmit to we have issues of tightening of monetary policy by the developed economies. We have received questions around how does the geopolitics, for example, what should we expect when we have the fighting between the Hamas and the Israelites, that war. Have we come out completely from the effects of the Russia-Ukraine fight? In the domestic scene, and I think the CS spoke a lot about issues to do